everyone. That beautiful piece of music is the Wheelwright Robinson's tune. It's traditional. The dance is the Abbott's Bromley horn dance, as some people have already been posting. The choreography is traditional. The band, the musicians, the CD, it's all unknown. And I'm trusting that somebody out there in our audience knows who did this beautiful piece of music. We want to know more about it, and we certainly want to acknowledge the musicians. So if anybody can solve the mystery, we will update the credits for the future recording and make sure it's listed. Hi, I'm Darlene Hamilton, and we are the Historical Tea and Dance Society. On our team, we have Lindsay Verbal assisting with the program, handling media, our media goddess, and our attendee questions. We have Reed Wilson monitoring Zoom for questions and posting. And we have Larry Hansen monitoring Facebook Live chat for questions and posting. We invite you to ask questions in those chat boxes on both platforms. You want to know where they are because a lot of good stuff gets posted there, and it's fun to follow along. We may or may not get to questions in this web chat, but we will certainly get to them in the after talk. So make sure you stick around for that after talk, which we post on our Historical Tea and Dance Society Friends page. Or if you registered for the event, you've already gotten that in the email. We will post in the chat at the end of this event. Thank you to Karen Axelrod and friends for the In the Moment concert every Tuesday live on Facebook. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We love our English country dance musicians. I'm going to go into a brief bio on Frederick and then do something a little different tonight. So Frederick Park has been teaching and collecting dances for more than 50 years. He is a dance caller, English country, contra, squares, and folk. He's a teacher, a choreographer, an organizer, a storyteller. His travels and influence span our country as he shares the joy of dance and of community spirit with communities from New England to Alaska and beyond. Please welcome Frederick Park. I know he'll be there any minute.
Here I am.
There you are. Hi,
Hello.
Frederick. I'm going to do something a little different tonight, and I hope you will forgive me. I asked several friends to tell me something about you. So to begin each thing tonight, I will share one of those and then hold up the thing card. Is that okay with you?
As you wish.
Okay, great. So.
Well, this is first.
Oh, okay, great.
I'm simply going to light a little candle so that we have little light, little firelight in the edge of.
I love it.
I'm coming to you, dear friends, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm coming to you from the foot of Mount Mitchell in the high Appalachian Blue Ridge of Western North Carolina. And do you know why the wise men smelled like smoke when they got to Bethlehem? The answer is because they'd come from afar.
Okay. Frederick, let me
go ahead, please.
Let me share this. David Millstone is researching early women callers of contras and squares and sent me this. A caller from Southern California cites Fred Park, you, as their biggest influence. Back in the mid-'80s, Fred was the most thoughtful, magical, educated, and dedicated caller I knew. So if we're going to jump right into thing number one.
Oh my goodness.
Satin honor.
Yes. If I may, Lindsay, while I'm talking, you can just share this first two pictures of my family. I thought I would honor the fact that my wife, Jenny Armstrong, the mother of my two daughters, Georgia Rose and Susanna, have completely and totally supported me. That's my new grandson, whose name is River, and his name came from the fact that Georgia Rose was down in the river right below my house, and she was pregnant and trying to come up with a name for this baby. And Her husband speaks 4 or 5 languages, and Spanish is his main other language. So he says, Rio, I love it. So that was what they called the baby, was River. And there we are sitting on Susanna's back porch. That's Susanna in green and Jenny Armstrong right behind her and Georgia Rose in black and Jules Maxwell right behind Georgia Rose. So thank you, family, for supporting me in stepping into the deep end of the pool. I chose to entertain the possibility of being involved in traditional dance and music and song and storytelling and theater rather than take a straight job. So I've worked 9 to 5 only twice in my life. And the rest of the time I've done this, dance and music and story and song and theater from time to time. Some say it's who you know, and I say it's how you know them. So said a woman who sounds just like her sister, and her name is Karen Kevra. And there are going to be some immense notes that I have asked Lindsay and Darlene to be kind enough, with the help of her staff, to share with you in the chat page. And I wanted to actually read a list of names of people who have influenced me. And so instead I decided to post it. But down at the bottom of that, there is a little series of links to some of those names, one of whom is Karen, interviewing Tony Barron for a podcast where she is similarly to Darlene in inspecting artists who have been influenced by some inspiration. So what is the inspiration for your art? Mine are varied and many, and rather than jump into a whole lot of history, I wanted to speak about 3 women who were seminal. Ethel Capps is first. And if you don't mind, could we show that, yeah, here she is shaking hands with President Kennedy, and right behind her is Raymond McLean, commonly called Bun. And you can't see, but behind Bun, there's a little old man and then 2 women. And you'll see in the next picture that that woman, when Kennedy moved down the line, is none other than May Gadd, who accompanied the Berea College Country Dancers. And Ethel was seminal in really promoting these dancers all over the world. Enough can't be said about her work as a contributor, as a woman from the South. She is rarely mentioned, but I'm going to talk about Ethel in my own personal life because it's how you know them, I had mentioned. So here I was, a new student at Berea College. And by the way, there's a link to a series of videos that John Ramsey did of the Berea College Country Dancers in the middle 70s. And you'll see Ethel in there in several of those little clips. But she was the director of the dance program when I came to Berea College in 1974. And I was a new student. I was a week old, found my way around, and happened one night to walk by an old building that's no longer on the campus. That was the original gymnasium. Everything at that school had been, the old school, the old part, had been built by the students. And I heard music. Well, I was already there as an older student and living off campus and was going home. And it was dark. And I heard music. So I saw this pile of rocks. I climbed up on it and looking in the window, and all of a sudden somebody grabbed me by the arm and said, "What are you doing looking in that window? Are you a peeping Tom or what?" I said, "They're dancing in there. It's just a bunch of students." And she said, "You come with me. I'll deal with you later." And she walked me in the door, which didn't bother me a bit. I now had privilege to be inside. And so the process was rehearsal and then a little 15 or 20 minutes of recreation. The students could pick whatever dances they wanted to do. And she changed the order and put that little moment of recreation very early on in the evening. And she had been watching me. And she walked up to this one girl with long hair and she said, "That boy sitting against the wall behind me, He's been watching you, and we're going to do recreation dancing now. And I want you to go ask him to dance. And she said, well, I don't know him. She said, look, he's been watching you. He was at the street dance welcoming all the students at the beginning of the semester. And I noticed that he actually knew what he was doing. I don't know how that is, but we're going to put him in these dancers if it breaks my neck. So that girl came up and just wouldn't leave me alone. And so I jumped in the dances and we danced for 15 minutes. And then she went on about rehearsal. And she said, look, I'm not going to have time to bother you. She said, but you come back around anytime you want. She said, you're welcome here. She said, you're a good dancer and we need men. Come back. And I did join the country dancers. And so that's Ethel in my life. Jenny Scheimer had a huge effect on my life, as did Sandy Bradley. And these two women happened to fall into the same little tiny story. And Jenny supported me when I got my first adventure teaching contra dance before there were any festivals. There was Berea, Brasstown, and Pinewoods back in the 70s. So I went to Berea for a year and left, and here I was on my own and with a woman who played the fiddle. And so I've got a band. My wife is a fiddler, and we're playing music and telling stories and calling dances. And I didn't turn down this job, but I didn't know any contra dances. I called Jenny Scheimer and Jim Morrison and Michael McKiernan and Fred Brunig and anybody and everybody I could get my hands on, said, help, I need some dances. Well, Jenny had met me at Christmas school, and she became an important supporter. When May Gabb died, they started a scholarship in her name. And Jenny put my name forward as a candidate, and I had applied. And I got the first May Gadd scholarship. And Sandy Bradley was there for the first time. She'd been coming to New England playing with the Gypsy Jippos and a bunch of wild and crazy guys. And she and I just fell in love with each other. And eventually she was going to fade away from her seminal role as the dance leader at Fiddle Tunes that I'll tell you more about later. But when she quit, she called Frank Farrell and said, hire Frederick Park. He's the guy you want. And I'd never been west of the Mississippi, and I went. And it changed my life. I'll tell you more about that later. So this portion of the program is brought to you by grapefruit juice, which every dance caller should start drinking no matter what. It will save your voice every time.
He said he was going to do that. Okay. Next, share from a friend. A scholar friend had this to say: Fred is a relentless seeker of truths, a creative living on the cusp of fact and imagination, a fervent organizer of language and community. And just one more, because it's short. Bruce Hamilton said, Fred is perhaps the most broadly educated person I know, and you can quote me on that. So, thing number 2, how do it know?
So, there were 3 English dancers sitting on a bench. And one of them said, you know, the best invention in the history of the world is the internal combustion engine. I don't care where you want to go, it'll get you there. Then the second one looked at him and said, you know what? I think the best invention in the history of the world has got to be Alexander Graham Bell's telephone. I mean, even if they're on the moon, if you know their number, you can call them up. And the third one said, I think the best invention is the thermos bottle. And the other 2 looked at each other. He said, you just think about it. You put something hot in it, like tea, and it'll stay hot. You put something cold in it, like cold tea, and it'll stay cold. And how do it know? Now, the powerful thing about that joke is that it ends with a question. And questions are more powerful than answers. How do it know? I want to talk about how we learn. There is fundamentally 2 big paradigms. There is those who just natively absorb what they're exposed to. That might be, for instance, all the people who have no access to schools of any sort. And then there is formal learning, the process by which we approach a teacher and we ask them, can we learn from you? We've paid money. We hope to be engaged in this program because we're here to learn. I love the Greek process of taking your students into your life and going to the market or going to the garden or going to wherever, and you simply ask questions and dialogue. 50% of that is listening well. Listening well is the missing link in education. Listening well is the missing link in the culture that we're part of. And so listening well should be a line of study right along with everything else. I have had at Berea, when I went back, because it took me 2 times to graduate, my wife had divorced me and took my girls to Chicago. So I moved from North Carolina to Berea to go back to school and finish. And I was clear that I was going to use Berea College money to go and spend a year abroad. And I wanted to go to France. And I found money that would let me do it. And I wanted to go visit. I looked and looked. The oldest ongoing dance in the entire country. And it turns out it's in a little place called Chavignol, dans le Midi, dans le centre de France. It is a little tiny highland in the middle of the country. The Loire River runs right by an old town called Sancerre, and about 7 or 8 kilometers away is a little town called Chavignol. And they have the largest collection of antique clothes in the country. And they were preserved 7 generations back by the Dubois family. And when John the 23rd and his ecumenical council shrunk the Catholic Church down and took all the priests away from the little parishes in Europe, suddenly Chavignol had an empty church. And they put the Dubois family in charge of it, which gave them a place to house their costumes, the oldest clothes in all of France, that scientists have been determined the plants that made these clothes are extinct. And they wear these clothes when they're invited to dance anywhere in the world. Kenneth Clark, husband to Sybil, dance collectors and aficionados of traditional dance in the British Isles, were very important people. And they've been mentioned very, very, very briefly by 1 or 2 folks, but they deserve your attention. Kenneth had been dead for some time, and Sybil came to Berea at the request of Berea to teach at Christmas school. She liked it and stayed, wanted to go around in the summertime to different places, and I became her driver for part of that. Other people were also her driver. Well, I met her a few years later, and here I was at Berea about to leave, and she said, "What have you been doing?" I told her about my plans to go to France and how that little didn't want me because I wasn't. And they didn't have a pension. They didn't have a hotel. The next time I wrote them a letter, they accepted me outright. And I found out when I got there that Sybil Clark and her husband Kenneth, that their dearest friends in Europe were Andre Dubois and his son Gilles. And anytime you want, Lindsay, this would be great. I want you to just hear a little bit of the music that I was exposed to in France. Ah, so that was a bourrée. They danced bourrées, brommels, which are long waistets and circles. And they also danced a lot of waltzes, a very beautiful, unique little couple dance that was exclusive to that community. And they danced two mazurkas that I haven't seen anywhere else. So I've stayed friends with them. I've been back several times. And there is another little short film of uh, myself and Bob Willoughby going back to that town and playing a little. Actually, we visited with Gilles and his wife Martine and another French couple. And I said, "Would you like to dance?" And they said, "Sure." So we went out in the sunshine, and I shared with them an Appalachian figure that is quite rare. And we do have that, don't we, Lindsay? Oh, good. Let's do that now. And that's that's I was calling in French. So my French was just barely passable when I got there, but after a year, I remember waking up in the night realizing I was dreaming in French. So it was so sweet to go by. We are still in touch with each other, but Le Saboté Sanserrois, that's the name of that group. They educated me as to how to educate a community. Out of a town of 250 people, actually at this point in time, it's 255. The number seems to gravitate up and down about 10 over the last 25, 30 years. So 240 to 250. Uh, they teach the little children. And who teaches them is the high school students. So the little children come to the high school students' rehearsal. And the high school students teach the children. And then they sit down and they watch the high school students have their practice. So they're required to stay. And you can bet to these little kids, these high school kids are goddesses and gods. They look up to them. I wish I had pictures. Their little shining faces are just amazing. And of course, they're being taught by the older people. So when you go to a community dance in that little town, everybody shows up. They have a little church community hall that the Catholic Church left them. They put down a temporary floor that's all stacked up like pallets in the corner when they stop dancing. And when they have a big party in the middle of the summer, sometimes they use those same pallets and they put up little feet under them and they use them, they put tablecloths on them and they eat outside and they put them together and then they dance into the night. So it's truly an adventure in community on a tiny scale where the entire town owns their dances. I've never found any place like it. And I wanted to just say that out loud because it's about head and heart and spirit. Those are the two binding forces. Uh-oh, I blew out my candle. Those are the two binding forces for formal education and informal education. And academics prioritizes head first, heart maybe, but spirit is a third. And if we ever can get those three together, it's because the influence of dance, which is head and heart and spirit, infuses ourselves into any school system that'll let us in their door. Having said that, I'll let you ruminate about that. I have a lot to say about it, but I will go on for now. So this portion of the program is brought to you by jokes, however bad they are, because everybody needs to be healed in this moment in time, and laughter is the best medicine, and that's the truth.
I believe. All right. Another friend shared something.
Oh my goodness.
At every single thing, there's something. At an ECD Contra camp, they had just finished an ECD set. Frederick stepped forward to call the next set. There were Contra snobs who sat out the ECD program, yet immediately jumped up to form Contra lines when Frederick came to the mic. He began by making a brief speech about the virtues of a mixed program and how the different English and Contra communities respected each other. At first, I thought he was being sarcastic, but then he pronounced, "So now I'm going to teach Dublin Bay." Nobody sat down. This was the first time I ever danced Dublin Bay, and it was an excellent choice for showing Contra dancers how exciting ECD could be. Another lesson learned. Thing number 3, 3.14. Earth is ground, community.
Now, it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that you understand that 3.14 is an intentional choice. And we'll talk about that later if you want to. But thank you so much for printing that, Darlene. And I should mention right now that relative to community, I can't see all of you who may be here tonight, but I know that there's a gathering. And this gathering is because of this woman that we can see, Darlene Hamilton, and her capacity to infuse the desire to help make this happen into the hearts and the minds of Reed and Lindsay and all the rest of the folks. And so I would like to offer her as a paradigm that any of us could model. By that, I mean, you could reach out. I came out of the 60s. Reaching out was cool to find old timers. All of the people that came through the 60s and 70s, it was in popular culture, it was in folk culture. How many old timers do you know? Oh my God, you met that person? What do they eat for breakfast? And so on and so forth. Things have changed. I've been asking as many young people as I can, what do you think about mentoring and that whole process? It's like, well, I'm interested in your story of how many people you wanted to reach out to mentor you, but what's to keep you from looking for young people to mentor? And I was immediately thinking of reasons why. And then I thought, wait, that's a good idea. Why not? So I'd like to suggest that mentoring is an elastic opportunity for those of us who know to reach out to young people and try to convince them that this thing that we share that helps make community happen, we could teach them. It's possible too that you might find young people who go to a dance and you see them really excited and you might walk up to them and say, would you like to know more about this? The weak link where education and community come together. As someone who has been calling dances for most of my life, I rose to the top of the shortest tree in the forest, you might say. uh, it, I was paid, the last dance I did for pay was about the same as the first dance I did. So it's a pay scale that's never changed. Yeah, so what? I'm doing it because I love it. And I'm also very keen to make dance happen wherever I go. So it's also possible for a community to own a dance. So if you go to an old dance community, like somewhere up in New England, or you go to Philadelphia and you dance around, that's a great community. They love each other, they take care of each other. The stories about the communities that you know, I'm sure you could all tell. We have a great community, but we went to this other place and oh my God, the way they take care of each other, it's unbelievable. So, what's it like to own a dance? At the Old Farmer's Ball, because I was the only caller there for a long time when I moved to Asheville from the Campbell Folk School, uh, we always started the evening with the Tennessee Mixer, which, by the way, is the dance upon which Frieda Metz Herman modeled her circle waltz mixer, the Wood Duck. Huh. Look at these two dances. They are the same, except one is in waltz time. So there is no author to the Tennessee Mixer, but I always started with that dance. And so when we got to have other callers coming to the Old Farmer's Ball, it was not unusual for the dancers to say, when the caller would say, take partners for the first dance, they say, oh, don't worry, we know what the first dance is. We already have it. And the band would simply play and the dancers knew the dance. And it was like always the first dance. It's like it's a sweet dance, it's a mixer. They could take a double handful of raw beginners that had never danced, and the community could teach them that dance without a caller. Wow. So it's possible that you could pick by asking your own dancers, do you all have a favorite dance? Well, is it possible that we could own one dance, that we just claim that dance as ours, no matter what it is? So there's a thought about building community. What if you find some musicians that are capable of playing, and like Phil Merrill, who was just dear man. I got to know him at the folk school and in Berea and in New England, and oh, what a sweetheart and a wild and woolly guy to hear him tell about his youth. But he could read forward and backward, and he would try anything. I was there at the folk school when he came up to Steve Hickman and said, Steve, I'm giving you the mantle. I want you to be the Lord of dance music at the Campbell Folk School. But the folk school was in transition and they had many different directors. And so they came and went, and those different directors didn't know that who Phil Merrill. They did get handed. Why would you always want to have the same fiddler on your staff? And the answer is because if you've got the best, you can add to that with the rest. But if you got one guy that can play English and Scottish and Irish and Cajun and French Canadian and New England and Southern and Western and reads, why would you ever look for anybody else? Because he could play everything. And it's a great story. Listen to him tell it about when he was a banker. Did you know this about Steve Hickman? And one day he's just taking a break like he always did in his three-piece suit and tie, playing the fiddle on the sidewalk, just sitting down by a fountain. And all of a sudden he looked up and there's $25 in his fiddle case. And he immediately went into the bank and quit his job and became a full-time fiddler. I'm not kidding. That's the truth. So there's the Saltina Coochie Valley where I lived with Jennifer Armstrong. And there are a lot of stories to tell about how I made dance happen in different places, but that little dance is still going on. I got invited because George Reynolds was a friend of mine to meet the folks over at Foxfire. And so we started a little community dance in Rabun County in North Georgia, right south of the North Carolina border. And we used dance in the English program to teach meter and rhyme. So I would give them figures, and the students all had to come up with creating dance calls. Then I moved to Brasstown. I moved to the Old Farm, moved to Asheville, and we started the Old Farmers Ball and the Black Mountain Festival, which was the first festival that blended popular music and dance. So we were looking for an opportunity to hire bands that everybody knew really well as their favorite. Everybody had, this is the days of LPs, right? This is 1980. And I had to talk them into playing for dance because nobody wanted to play for dance. They didn't do it. And I said, look, I'm going to be the caller. I know your music inside out. And I started naming the tunes that they knew that I knew would work for dance. And so they said, okay. And we went on to build a festival that for the 4 years that I ran it, it was always a chance to bring together music that had never been presented in dance. Did y'all, any of y'all get to hear Rare Air, the best bagpiper and the best drummer from Canada, who are both the proteges of Alec Duthert, the best drummer who's ever lived, and Jamie McIntosh, who was piper to the Queen. So we had a bagpiper and a drummer and a bass player. And when they came on stage, people were looking at these three instruments going, what is this? And when they cut loose, it was like jigs and airs and reels and strathspeys and just blew your socks off. And then they're in the dance hall doing the same thing. So looking for odd assortments of musicians, wherever you find them, and roping them into your dance community. If you don't have a big dance, if you have a little tiny dance somewhere in your kitchen, in your living room, whoever's, invite 8 people or 10 or 12 couples. And if you do it at home, you won't have to pay for a hall. And you'll have enough money in your pocket to probably hire one musician. Hire somebody that you've never hired to play for dancing, and they'll walk in there and just compliment them, give them little things to nibble on, give them something to drink, everybody tell them you love them, and by Ned, they will be in your camp for the rest of your life. There's a lot to be said about the Festival of American Fiddle Tunes and its influence on my life, and I probably don't have time to go there. So I just want to mention that that is a seminal event in my life, and it has made community happen by virtue of the years and years of people going there and finding that it's a fiddle festival where dance is not mentioned until you get there and you realize, oh my goodness. So there's so much to be said about that. I'd like to end this section rather than telling you a joke or sponsoring by somebody is, Lindsay, would you just flash those few little pictures of community dances? You might see yourselves in here, folks. That's Nashville. And that's where they still dance. That's down in Greenville, South Carolina, where Nicholas Broadbridge got invited to come and do the first dance ever. And oddly enough, a Methodist seminary decided this is a wonderful thing. And they asked me to come over with Margaret Talbot, who's sitting over on the far left, the only woman in a chair. And Margaret has helped build, I was there for a lot in the first year, but there is now, for the seminarians in South Carolina, part of their curriculum is learning about English country dance as a community building tool besides bingo or softball, because it uses everybody. And all those kids dance, by the way. Next picture would be what? Oh, there is St. Louis, bless their heart. Now that's a mix. That's one place where the English dance community and the contra dance community are a whole lot the same people. There are a lot of folks in there from other places, but St. Louis is truly a gem of a place for mixing together the various genres of dance under the same hood of It's by Ned Us. So the last picture is This is Monty Toyon, bless its heart. And of course, there are a bunch of notables there who all of you all coming from Southern California would know. And that was the end of a weekend. So most people had already gone. This is the end of the Sunday afternoon. These were the stragglers, and they were kind enough to let me make a family picture of those who made it to the bitter end. And I think there may be one more, but I think that's it. Oh, this is a little tiny dance on an island over here in North Carolina, in a little town called Marshall. And the COVID has stopped that little dance from happening. But it's a wooden floor with linoleum on it, so it's really awkward to tell that it's a suite hall. It's just a little echoey. But this was another example of a community just talking it up and making it happen. Those are all local folks from right there in a little town here in the mountains. Pretty hall though, isn't it? And of course, that's back in St. Louis. And I couldn't resist throwing that in there on account of Gene being there and the St. Louis picture. I've been taking these group pictures for 40 years, but most of them are on film. So these are the few of the handful of digital pictures, and on we'll go to the next thing.
Okay. Here we go. A past student told me Fred started the Old Farmers Ball in Asheville, North Carolina, back in late 70s and 80s. Fred is a genius dance master who taught us the very fine details of dance figures and how to execute those figures with grace, style, and subtle nuances. I feel extremely fortunate to have learned a wide variety of dances that included Appalachian big circle, mixers, squares, triplets, ECD, Sicilian circle, waltz circles, and contras. Thing number 4, 4 couples.
As you all know, those of you who are historians of 17th century dance, as you look at the various collections of the tunesmiths who tried to get their stuff published with dances, the earliest collections have squares in them, but it didn't take long till the influence of the long ways set and the circles really took over. And so I wanted to give you an example. And you know, history doesn't always repeat itself, but as Mark Twain said, it doesn't repeat itself, but it frequently rhymes, doesn't it? So here we are living in a period where square dance, unfortunately, will cause some people to sit down if you're giving an evening of dance. And I would like to suggest that if a community has written into their bylaws that they are interested in community dance and tradition, that somebody privately needs to walk up to these people and say, we are a community. And the tradition up until just the last 10 or 15 years was everybody dancing together, even if they didn't want to do this particular dance, especially if we needed another couple. So please, the next time somebody says square dance, think twice before you adamantly go sit down in protest of something that you think you might not enjoy, because you probably will actually smile anyway. But you don't need to say it to them publicly. Go privately and talk to them and listen to what they have to say. Again, listening is key. They might have a reason. They might say, I have a splinter in my foot. So we're going to play for you 2 little dances, one of which is a bunch of high school students. I keep going back to Berea. And here I am talking about Berea, and I'm in the South. And oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times when I've been part of the 5 things, I hear somebody mention Swarthmore. Bless its heart, Swarthmore gets more attention than almost any school in the country. for all the wonderful folks that have come through there. And there must be a lot said about Berea's influence, not just on me, but in the Southeast in general. And so going there, there's this cadre of kids that love to dance. And I just happened to be visiting a house where a bunch of them were there. And they said, "Oh, look, it's that guy who knows a lot of dances. Let's dance." So we went out in the yard and danced. And I realized I was coming back to Berea just in a couple of weeks. I said, "Hey, would you like to learn a dance to show it off?" So when I come back in 2 weeks, we'll take a break in the middle of the evening and you guys can step out and show us what most people consider to be a questionable square dance. It's fain I would, and I'd love to hear your appreciation of my interpretation of these figures, because as you will see, I have changed some things. So here we go. Fain I would, with just a bunch of high school students from Berea, Kentucky, in the middle of an evening dance. So that's only the last half of the dance, but here is, in my humble estimation, I haven't been to every single one of the 5 things, but everyone that I've ever seen, no one has decided to share a new dance. So I wrote one, keeping in mind all of the conversations about positional calling and English and American. So here's a dance that blends together a figure from a Scottish dance called Posty's Jig, done in an alternative manner, and cross trail through, borrowed from the Western square dance tradition, and it happens twice in the same dance. And let's see. So there's some other things. We're only going to show you the chorus and the first figure, but this is my contribution of thanks to Darlene Hamilton, who you can see right there. So this is for you, Darlene. And it is called Cloud Control, which is a name that my dear friend Cami Kaner said, "Have you got a name for it?" I said, "No." He said, "How about Cloud Control?" And it's stuck. So here's Cloud Control. This two, swing. Because you know it's all about that bass, no trouble. Allemande left with the corner, right and left strand. Meet your partner, promenade, no trouble. To the middle and back. Swing one time. Take a big deep breath. Head couple. Ready, go. Heads cross trail through. Separate around 2. Go into the middle and roll away with a half sash J. Cross the trail through. Go to the end of the line. Fall back. And you pass through and turn at the post. Make a new line. Fall back. Pass through and turn at the post. Stay inside. turn at the post. Fall back. Last through one more time. Goes from a circle to the left. Circle left. Swing your corner to the middle and back. With the new corner, turn left hand. Promenade. Then couples ready again. Across the trail, just to say hi to everybody. Like, thank you for being in this square dance. Thank you. Where did you get that? You're welcome. I think we're done. Okay. All right. Yay! So, oh, well, I haven't got a commercial for this one. So I guess we'll just go on to thing number 5.
Not yet. First, the story. That was great. Thank you so much, Frederick. I know my group will love that dance. It looks like really a lot of fun. All right. I saved the best for last and I had to put it in. Bay Area Country Dance Society held an English American Week in 1989 in Sonoma County, and Frederick was on staff as a square and contra caller. He was scheduled to lead a session of squares every morning at 9 a.m., first workshop after breakfast. And each day, he began the session grousing about having to get up that early. One night later in the week, Thursday, he was also scheduled to lead a late night storytelling session that I know continued well past midnight. The next morning, as 9 o'clock approached, the dancers were on the floor in our square sets. The band had done its sound check and was ready to go, but there was no sign of Frederick. Then at precisely 9 a.m., he barged into the hall with his sleeping bag trailing behind him. He didn't say a word, just grumbled incomprehensibly, plodded to the hall, grabbed the wireless mic off the stand, spread out the sleeping bag in front of the band, crawled into the sleeping bag, signaled the band to begin playing, and proceeded to call a square dance while lying on the floor in a sleeping bag with his back to the dancers. Amazing. I learned that day that it is possible to dance an improvised square while laughing uncontrollably. Thing number 5.
Oh my
Life and
gosh.
death.
Oh my gosh. I had forgotten about that. Yeah. I'm going to edit that just a little tiny bit, Darlene. There were like 5 or 6 guys that came to my cabin and literally woke me up. And they said, you need to be in the dance hall right now. And they picked up the corners of the mattress. And they carried me, mattress, sleeping bag, and all into the hall and just plopped me down. So when that dance session was over, I eventually got out of the bag and stood up. But when that session was over, I had to haul my bed back to my cabin by myself. Everybody just went to their next class. Oh my goodness. Okay. I say life and death because these are heavy times that we're in. Dear friends, I have so wanted to talk about things that were weighty, in the sense that this is 5 things. We're here to talk about dance. And I know that we all enjoy the memories that are dredged up. I watch it every week. I come here to participate in it. And yet at the same time, the dance community has never been able to stand completely and totally alone from the popular culture that surrounds us, from the news. These are desperate times. I swear to you, I really feel like the best that the 20th century had to offer is already right behind us. or the 21st century, that we are on a downhill slide unless we get simpler in our lives. And that does not exclude dance. It can't. As a matter of fact, here's where we can have a positive influence on those who are seriously going to be downtrodden emotionally, spiritually, and so on. One of the greatest things historically that's true about being a musician or a vaudevillian or an actor or a singer or a serious storyteller is that when people hit hard times and they run out of money and they've not much food, people will pay their last red cent to go be entertained. So I'd like to suggest that there is a hierarchy of possibilities. I'm borrowing this from Maslow. We all need air, water, food, and shelter from the storm, be it clothing or a roof over our head. And beyond that, that which is required for any one of us subjectively, I would suggest that within the dance and music community that we're part of, it might be that the fifth thing, that which is most important, is possession of an aesthetic, appreciation of something that's beautiful. For some, it could be as simple as their mother's smile or the sun falling on their face if they went to sleep and it was blustery and chilly and suddenly it's not blustery and it's warm and sunny. Could be a flower. But I've heard everybody that's spoken at the five things talk about some moment that was transcendent for them, having to do with an experience on the dance floor, or having to do with a moment in the band, or having to do with the feeling that I'm walking into an old hall. I remember David Millstone told me a story about when he was doing some homework and researching a dance that used to go on in Connecticut that hadn't happened in years and years. And he wanted to bring back the people that were still alive that had been there. And he was the first one to arrive. He planned food to be part of the event, an important thing that Darlene does, even though it may be just tea. When you can talk your dance community into having food, even if just a snack, a little something to complement a dance. It might not be tenable most of the time, but it's an important consideration. You're feeding people spiritually and physically. So he's setting up the table for welcoming people and maybe food or whatever. And this character walks in the door who hadn't been there in a long, long time. And he'd been on David's mailing list. And David heard this man's voice behind him say, "Smells just the same." And David turned to him and he said, "When you were the last time you were here?" And it had been ages. But he walked into that dance hall, and that old dance hall smelled the same. Asheville, North Carolina is the big town near me. I've been listening to my friends talk about rent going through the roof. And the word that is common in this part of the country is rent is obscene. A dear friend of mine from San Francisco lives in a rent-controlled place. And she says, if I move out, I will never be able to stay in the city. Darlene says, if we didn't have this dance in LA, if we didn't have a lot of people to draw on, we have to have a certain number to break even because rents are so high. So a little tiny dance in your community, if it happens on one side of town in somebody's house and another side of town in somebody else's house, and you guys all get together again, once we all feel safe, a little tiny community dance. And I mean that in the truest sense, 4 couples. You can do 1,000,000 dances with 3 couples. So I just wanted to say again, honor the opportunity to make dance happen, mentor some young people, asking them to let you mentor them. Reach out to musicians wherever you can find them and draw them into the circle of influence of traditional dance. And I have so much more that I hope to talk about. And I have to say, I'm a storyteller. And Darlene Hamilton, if she had another life, I would say this woman should have been a lawyer. She helped me edit and hone down almost like, oh my God, I could never have made this case if she'd have just let me come here on my own. So for the time being, I want to end with letting you know that the music and dance community needs to remember to incorporate singing. I love to sing. I love to say to people, I can carry a tune. I just have a hell of a time unloading it. But I would like to end my whole 5 things with a ballad. Here it is. 1 was a racehorse. 1 was 1 1 race. 1 So that's a ballad. It's a joke, and you need to sing it at your next dance. And I'm going to say bye for right now. And thank you all so much for coming. If you enjoyed us half as much as we enjoyed you, then we enjoyed you twice as much as you enjoyed us.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. We're not leaving you yet. We want to know what your favorite dance is.
Well, in actuality, I didn't say anything about timing. Timing is absolutely, it makes any dance great. But when Prince William is danced and all 3 couples have got the timing right, it is a transcendent experience. It is my favorite dance.
Oh, wow. That's a great dance. Yes, I love it. Thank you. Thank you. We do that often out here. Ah,
And are you going to ask me about anything else, Darlene?
I am. Are you a tea drinker? And what's your favorite tea?
Well, my favorite tea is chamomile grown from my own yard,
Oh,
but most importantly, put in it local honey. It is a
oh, wow.
homeopathic introduction to the community that you live in, coming from the ground and infused into your cup of tea. So if you like sweet tea, try a little bit of honey.
Thank you. That sounds amazing. Yes, absolutely. Fresh chamomile. All right. Let me go into the end stuff so we can get into that after talk, because there's lots of questions and lots of more fun things to talk about. Thank you so much, Frederick, for being with us.
You're welcome, darling.
You're so dear to me. You were one of my first friends through the online community. You were the person that reached out and cared and asked me how I was doing. I really appreciate that, and I had to get that in. I want to give a shout out to our 5 Things team, Lindsay Verbal in the background, Reed Wilson on Zoom, Larry Hanson on Facebook with our helpers, Kara King, who's on vacation this week, Dan Vilter, and Adele Nichols. Watch our past 5 Things web chats. You can find the link in the chat box. You can find us on our website, historicalteandance.org. /Colin/. Check out the list of web chats we've had on since March 2020 when this all started. They're also available on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. The after talks are not publicly available. However, you may request a link to them because we know it's getting a little late for some of you all from the East Coast. A big thank you to all the folks who have been sending in donations to our group, the Historical Tea and Dance Society. You have definitely helped us pay the bills during this time. We really appreciate it. We also have this little thank you gift, our 5 Things pin that we love so much. And you'll be getting yours in the mail if you haven't gotten it already, Frederick. We are posting the After Talk link, and let's see, we're going to have the chat in the Dropbox. There is also another sheet in the Dropbox with some things that Frederick wanted you to know, different links for videos and steps to a dance and things like that. Coming up next week on Tuesday, May 25th, we have Nikki Herbst. We're really looking forward to having Nikki with us. She's an amazing photography documentarian and teacher, dancer, organizer. It's going to be great. Join us at tea time on Thursdays if you want to hang out with our community and just schmooze a little and have some fun. We are posting a link for donations, support Frederick's ongoing research into the life and times of Frank Smith, the first director of Berea College Country Dancers. So we're going to post that. And before you leave, we have to wish Frederick a happy birthday. Today is his birthday, and we hope you'll come into the after talk and wish him a happy birthday with us. I'm so glad you decided to share it with us. And our closing tune is Slow Air, Downfall of Paris. And we'll see you all in 2 minutes for a wonderful after talk coming up. Bye.